Hello, everyone. This is our Social Talk Live show. I'm Andrea Vall, and I have the lovely.
And under here is Phyllis Kerr, and this is a Hats and Wigs show.
It is.
We actually have a tremendous amount of really good information to share today, but we kind of like to lighten it up a little bit. And if you're looking at us, you get that right away.
Let's not take ourselves so seriously. We have great content, but we like to have some fun. So let's get going. Today, we're going to be talking about how to price your services as a social media manager. And the format of our show is we spend the first half hour talking about content, giving you great tips. And then you feel free to ask questions as you go along. The last 15 minutes will bring people in to ask questions. You can ask questions on the sidebar. And as always, hats and wigs are encouraged. Clothing is mandatory. So,
oh my goodness. See who's quick on the draw with clicking that X and getting those people out of there. And also, we're juggling a lot of things today. So if someone comes in the chat and we think it's inappropriate for them to be there, we will try to get them out as quickly as possible.
Yep. So, yeah, great. So we are, I think one of the questions is, are we live? We are live. So hopefully you can hear us, and we're going to get started with pricing your services. So the first thing you have to think about when you are, we specialize in social media management, but this really can apply to a lot of different freelancers, these concepts for sure. So we're kind of approaching it as a social media manager or a social media consultant. So that's our experience. That's our niche. We've got Social Media Manager School that we founded, and these are kind of some of the same things we teach in there, but you're getting the sneak peek at it, at some of the stuff we talk about. But there are basically a few different considerations that you have to take into account when you start pricing your services, because you're going to have different tiers, different levels of services possibly. One would be a one-on-one consulting rate. And then you might have some different like project rates or different retainer rates, or, a monthly based quote that you do for a client.
Right. And let's think about that, because they're really very clear 4 different rates. One of them is that hourly consultation rate. And we're going to talk about that because that is really the highest rate that you set for yourself. The second one is an hourly task rate. And that's what it would be to do a particular task or a certain set of tasks. And then the third one is project-based quote, which is based off of that hourly task rate. Because we have math in this, people. We actually have math involved in this. And
we're going to cover some math.
And then the fourth one is a monthly retainer, which would include some of your consultation rate. It's going to contain some of your hourly task rate and some of those project-based rates. So that kind of ties it in for a retainer rate. And my hat keeps going lower and lower and lower. I can't see my notes. So those are the four formulas we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So I tried to paste it in there. The formatting doesn't work so well in the Blab chat. I know. I got nice little bullet points, but that's okay. We're actually going to also give you something free, a little freebie at the end, where you're going to be able to kind of see a lot more of this. So that's your little incentives to stay.
You have a very different personality with this wig on, by the way. You have this kind of like sexy thing going on. I don't know. That Farrah Fawcett thing's coming through.
It's cracking me up. My wigs, I love wearing wigs. That's all I'm saying. This is my favorite part of the week.
I have to do this because I cannot see a thing.
So basically, so just to kind of recap what we talked about, the 4 models of pricing: hourly one-on-one consulting, hourly task rate, which is going to be a little bit different because you're going to be able to plug that task rate into different parts of your day. That's going to be something you could possibly outsource at some time. You're charging for the tasks, but maybe there's someone else you can find to do it cheaper while you're ramping up your business. So that's something to consider as well. And then you're going to have kind of quotes and retainers for either something that's project-based or a monthly retainer that where you're going to be doing some ongoing work for the client. So
let's jump into the first one. And this is one for those of you who are doing consulting. So your consulting rate is very different from your task rate. And so the consulting rate, we actually have a formula. I mean, a real live math formula, people. You know, Andrea has a degree in engineering, and so she's like, it's like,
makes me laugh. It's like a whole nother life right there.
I'm the crazy
artist. Now look at me.
Yeah, now look at you. I think, the brain is flipped over a little bit. So we actually have a formula about this. And so the way that we like to teach it and the way we like to approach it is that first thing you do is you need to figure out what you would like to make as a social media consultant. Now, thinking about the consultant part of it, okay? And what you're going to do is the thing is you actually have to remember that you're working for yourself now. And if you used to work in a corporate position, you didn't have all of that overhead that you were paying for. You just got your salary or your rate, and that was it. But now you have a house, and you have to take care of your home office, and you have technology, and you have software, and you have all these things that are part of your overhead. So you can't just kind of like pull a number out of the air. You actually have to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. So I remember when I was working as an engineer, and someone was paying my salary, I calculated what I was earning, and it was like $20 an hour. And I was like, woohoo! That was, early on, I was all excited. $20 an hour. That sounded great to me when I was first starting out. And but that was for 8 hours of solid work. You have marketing, you have other things that you are doing to fill your funnel that are not going to be billable hours. You have to realize that in a 40-hour work week, as a consultant, if you're doing straight up consulting, you may have only about 20 true billable hours in your week, unless you have some sort of team that is booking appointments for you and doing a lot of that back end marketing type of stuff, following up with clients, doing accounting, doing all that stuff. So your hourly rate can't be based on a 40-hour a week salary that you've had in the past if you were. And then the other thing I like to factor in is the fact that when you're on vacation, you're not pulling in money unless you've got some sort of product or some sort of thing that people are purchasing from you on your site. So you have to calculate that in your formula as well. So I have I like a lot of vacation. I usually schedule at least 4 or 5 weeks of vacation personally, and that's going to go up. Man,
you do vacations really well, but you have young kids at home too, and so that's the thing that you have to consider is your particular where you are in your lifestyle and where you are in your family life right now, and so you might only have 5 hours a week available for consulting. 20 might seem like really high. So you think about that and you say, okay, well, 5 hours a week and maybe only, how many weeks out of the year that you only figure this out, Andrea? Do you have only 30 or what do you do?
Yeah, I use like 48 weeks. And so, sometimes what I like to kind of have you think about as a consultant for your consulting rate, we're talking about that first highest price rate at this point, is that you want to kind of backdoor that. So we're going to take your target yearly salary that you would like to earn, and you're going to factor in some of the overhead costs for that. So you have to factor in taxes. You have to factor in, the fact that you've got to buy your own printer ink or upgrade your computers or, pay for some of this other stuff that is that comes out of your salary. So factor in some of that overhead. If you want to just do a kind of a rough calculation, I suggest somewhere between around 30 to 50% could be overhead, possibly, overhead costs. Yeah, this is great to just give you a starting place for looking at your hourly rate. So we're going to take our target yearly salary, factoring in overhead. Then we're going to divide it by the number of weeks each year, and then times the billable hours you think you have. And again, let's just I know, right? Well, here's our math.
Let's do it though. Let's just let's plug in those numbers, and then you'll see how it works.
Yep. So this is kind of not formatted correctly. Again, we're going to give you a little something that's going to help you with some of these formulas. So it's going to be a little bit more clear. But if we plug in, say, let's say we wanted to make $100,000. So we want to make $75,000.
Yes. Okay.
And so we're going to have to factor in overhead. Let's just factor in 25% there. That's not great. So I don't know. I've got to get my calculator out.
Old school calculator. You don't do it on your phone, right? You don't do it on your phone.
No, I do, but
So if the target yearly salary is $75,000, and you have 48 work weeks that you're going to do, and 20 billable hours in each of those weeks. Okay, so I'm gonna do the math like with so on the top is your target yearly salary divided by I feel like I'm back in cheerleading school, 48 work weeks times your 20 billable hours a week, and you divide that into that salary, and you end up with $78 per hour.
Yeah, so that
with those
can
numbers.
Get you, right. So that can get you thinking, because say you're starting out and you are, or say you're wanting to get to that point and you're charging $35 an hour or something like that, you're going to have to work basically a 40-hour work week, which is pretty much impossible unless you're, actually 40 hours a week of straight consulting. Impossible. And it's pretty much impossible unless you're working, 60 to 70 hours a week outside of that. So to fill those times. So we've got that formula here pasted here on the side. And actually, I wonder if I can put that in as a
image
question. Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. If we could share images, we could just show this to you guys so easily. But at the end, we're going to give you a way to see it as an actual math formula. And if you're part of our school, Social Media Manager School, you already have this. And so you can go and just pull it up, and you can look at it while we're going through it. It's a good way to be reminded about how to do your own pricing.
Yeah, so here's the kind of formula here. Is your target yearly salary, you've got the overhead, and you're going to divide it by the number of work weeks you are going to work each year, times the billable consulting hours, which is probably only 20 at this point if you're filling it all up, 20 at most. And then you've got your hourly consulting rate. So that all equals your hourly consulting rate. Now, this is kind of an exercise on how to consider your hourly rate. You may be doing different things with your time as a social media manager or consultant. You might be also doing these projects. You might also be doing speaking and training and workshops or things like that. So this is just one piece of the puzzle on where you're going to set that hourly consulting rate initially. And I always recommend, sometimes people feel, well, I'm just starting out. $75 seems like kind of crazy. It's okay to adjust that and say, okay, I'm going to, for a period of time here, I'm going to, I'm just starting out. I'm going to charge $50 an hour. And there's a lot of overhead that goes into that hour too. You're researching the client before you get started with them. You are following up afterwards with billing. You are, kind of maybe following up with some notes that you had during your session. There's emails that go back and forth about setting up another session or whatever that is. So, you want to, Amy says, don't devalue yourself right there. That's very true. Do not devalue yourself.
And that's exactly what happens when you do the math. When you say, okay, well, I talked to the client for an hour at $78, but I actually did 4 hours worth of work. Now, how much are you making?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's Exactly. So that's the reason you have to really see exactly what it takes for you to do a consultation. So for me, I definitely do the research beforehand. I definitely dive into things. You should time yourself and see how long that takes. And then when you set this rate, look at that rate and see if that makes sense for you for the amount of time that you're spending with it. And then through time, as you get more expertise in whatever it is that you are consulting about, then obviously that number definitely goes up. And at that point, your number goes up and you can either keep your billable hours a week at the same level, or you can drop them back and then have more time to do other things or more time with your family. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. And the other thing too, to realize too, if you're starting out at a certain level, say you say, I'm just starting out. I'm going to start charging $50 an hour. The great thing about working for yourself is that you can give yourself a raise anytime you want.
That's great. And I wish I had taken a screenshot of that, because you saying that with that wig is just perfect. So it's really interesting. So this is just one of the 4 formulas that we're going to go over during the blab. So that one was setting your hourly consultation rate. That's not your implementing rate. That's just you talking and doing high-level marketing plan discussions with a client or whatever it is that you're consulting about. So that's the hourly consulting rate. Has everybody got that? Any questions about that one? We're gonna move to the next one, because these are build on themselves, through the way that we have it structured. And once you know that you've done the math, you can set that number aside for just a little bit.
Right.
And now you need to figure out what your hourly task rate is going to be.
Yeah. So there's, like we said before, this depends a little bit on, or the thing that why this is different is that, you can fit these times in at different hours of the day. Consulting, one-on-one consulting is usually happening at certain times of the day where your workday is blocked off. The project rate, you can outsource some of those pieces. You can automate some of those pieces. You can get faster at some of those pieces of the project that you're doing. Like say, when you first start working with a client, it takes you, half an hour to write 10 tweets. You get better and better at it. All of a sudden, you're essentially giving yourself a raise there, where it takes you 15 minutes to write 10 tweets for that client. So, that's a good thing too. And you're going to actually start by the similar type of formula, where you're going to figure out again your yearly salary. We're going to talk about the work weeks each year, and then it's the task hours per week. So, you may have more task hours per week than you have billable consulting hours.
Right. And the thing about it is an easy way to figure this out is take a task that you would normally do for a client, and then do, like you're talking about, the 10 tweets, and go ahead and time yourself. Just time yourself and see how long that takes, knowing that this is probably the slowest you'll ever be at it. Right?
Yeah.
And so then that can tell you that, okay, so this particular task, creating these tweets, takes this amount of time. So if that was my only thing that I was doing for a client, how would that set up as my hourly rate to do that? So let's go ahead and let's see if we can plug some numbers in here for this one. I'm going back up to the document you guys are going to get. Oops, I just told them what they're getting.
I know. I love this document because it's formatted so much nicer. So again, this is the project rate. Task hours each week, again, are going to be a little bit different. But, so
how many hours?
Possibly the same.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So you've already figured out you have 20 hours set a week for consulting. So let's say that you have 10 hours a week that you're going to be doing tasks, that you actually can do a task. And so that's the billable hours that you have in a week. And you have your number of weeks that you're working in a year, and you have your target salary, right? So it's the same math again. And then this will give you your hourly project rate, your task rate. Mm-hmm. Now, if you do this, you might find that it's going to be quite a bit lower than your consulting. And then again, you need to look at it from a consumer point of view and see if it makes sense in terms of matching value. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the one thing you have to know. And then some people say, well, I don't know what they're going to think when they see this hourly rate. Well, the thing is, we don't want you to tell them the hourly rate. This rate is for you to figure out your project fee later on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So remember, this is not something that you're going to share with a client, because we do not recommend at all that you do any type of social media work for an hourly rate.
Yeah, because charging by the hour for social media is definitely more challenging, because it really, you kind of are trained to then work as slow as possible.
Right. And which makes no sense whatsoever.
So the client you're charging less to the client as you improve. So it doesn't make sense. You need to charge a project rate or some sort of retainer or some sort of quote, so that they don't wonder, they're not auditing you on how many hours you're working and things like that. So, and Mike actually, hi Mike, he actually is talking about a different method. He says, I was taught to charge the most for the work that comes easiest to you. That's a really great thought. And other deliverables and skills you are developing can be priced on a sliding scale.
Yes, well, this is the thing. If you know what your gift is, it might be consulting. It also might be doing tweets. Maybe you're the tweet master and you have this incredible gift at creating tweets. And it's true. But the point of this is that finding out what your hourly rate is a personal discovery. Okay. Yeah. So that part of math is for you to figure out what your hourly rate is, because again, we don't advise social media managers, and we're talking about managers here, not consultants, but managers and community managers, to always quote a retainer or a project fee. So in order to get to that retainer project fee, we have to come up with this sort of hourly rate so we can figure things out in that next formula.
Yeah. So we actually also have a little project fee kind of project fee formula. It's a lot of math here. It's Friday afternoon. My gosh. Exhausting. So your project fee, that's a big thing. A lot of people wonder, how do I figure out what to charge for this project or this retainer or whatever? And what you're going to need to do is figure out really what your time that it's going to take you and how much time you're going to have to invest in doing this work. And this is where it gets really critical to measure that time accurately. And so,
because we've been there when we didn't do it accurately and we thought, oh yeah, I can do that in like an hour or two. And then 8 hours later, it's like, oh my God, I'm still doing this project.
Yep. So true. And then, so you've got one of the ways you can determine a project fee is as you get better as a social media manager or whatever your freelancing occupation might be, you are going to know how long it takes you to research, what to post on Facebook or to go out and do the activities you need to do that are under the scope of the project. So you'll be able to eventually have those numbers, plug them and play them into the project and get a quote out. But initially, when you're first starting out, you want to probably measure how long does it take you to write 10 tweets? How long does it take you to do that research that you said you would in the quote? So, there is a little bit of a little bit of learning curve sometimes, and you're going to probably get faster. But again, like we said, is you get fast and better, you're kind of giving yourself a raise there because you're, saving yourself time. You're figuring out better ways to do things and charging appropriately.
Now, most people, they always ask us about the buffer part of this math formula, because the buffer is a little bit of a non-math kind of a thing, but it is, we could set a percentage on there of a buffer to add to this, but it's real important to add the buffer inside the formula. That's the most important part there.
Right, because you want to make sure that you're allowing for kind of some of the overages that might happen.
Always happen.
Yeah, really. Yeah, not sometimes, pretty much always. So, you might get really fast in a very focused period, but, you're going to want to allow for, watching a few cat videos from time to time. I don't know.
No. That's so funny. So yeah. you could multiply. The buffer could be like you can multiply by 2 or maybe 1.5 or something like that, yeah, to give you that buffer time. And knowing that you're bidding the project based on the actual time it takes you plus a little buffer time times the project rate that for yourself, then that will give you a project rate. So does that make sense to everybody? So when you know your own personal project rate and you know the amount of time it takes and you put those two together plus a buffer, then you get a project rate, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's and make sure you're adding up all the pieces of that project. And then we get to the retainer fee, and I can't believe our half hour is gone already. It's like, wow, I know.
All right, so
let's get to our retainer fee. Well, luckily the retainer fee is very similar. We got some great comments here coming to the live chat. So awesome. Yeah. Time flies when you're wearing a wig. Yes, absolutely, Garrett. I know. So true. So I'm going to get a T-shirt with that.
Oh my gosh! So now we're on the third formula. So we went through the consulting rate, went through the project rate. Actually, this is our fourth formula. Oh, geez. Okay, and then the third formula was a project rate. And now the monthly retainer fee. Now you might think that the project rate and the monthly retainer fee are the same thing, but in a lot of ways, a monthly retainer contains more tasks, more variety of tasks, things that have different rates to them. Yeah. Whereas a project rate might be only Twitter or only Facebook or only Facebook and Twitter. Whereas a monthly retainer might include 5 social accounts or and including email and including, all sorts of different things.
Yeah. I mean, there might be the important thing with, they're really very similar in kind of the idea of them. What you have to get across to your client, though, is making sure they know where the boundary is, where it's out of scope, where it's beyond the pricing. So if they are on some sort of retainer, then you might automatically build in there like for, a weekly call, so 4 calls per month that they're allowed, or some, X amount of email support. And either way, if you're just doing kind of more straight, here's a project and, we're quoting it till it's done, or if it's a monthly retainer, you need to spell these things out in your proposal to them, so that you can point out to them when they're asking you, oh, could you just create a little, landing page for us or whatever, could you just do it real quick, Yeah,
I actually got one of these today. And the interesting thing is the project that they suggested was a really good one, and it would be very helpful to them. And it's like great for marketing for this thing. But because the contract isn't not even close to containing this within it, then you have to think, okay, well, as a social media manager, do you come back and say, this is totally out of what the contract is, and I'm happy to add it on for this amount of money? So that's where you would go back and find your project fee and figure that out for that thing. Or if your retainer list of expectations has a little clause in it that says you can give me certain projects during the month, knowing that my time will shift to doing the project instead of doing some of the regular tasks that I have to do. And if that understanding is really clear for the client, so that instead of doing creating 100 tweets for the week, you're creating 20 so that you can put your time and attention on this other project, then that works, right? But that, again, you have to have that list of expectations, and that's sort of going outside the scope of this particular blab. But the point being is that it happens. It happens a lot.
Right, right. So true. Okay, awesome. So, hey, should we go ahead and give out the link to download all these fabulous goodies and pricing formulas?
You're going to love it, especially if you love math formulas. You'll be like, ooh, let me at that. And there is one thing that's very cool about this, and I'm actually going to look through it and make sure that before I say it, that it's actually still cool, is that in this document, we have a calculator. And is Tracy still here? Tracy, are you still here with us?
She might have left. I don't.
Okay, so one of our I think Tracy did this one. Isn't Tracy? It isn't Tracy. Oh my God. Okay. Yes. So we have this calculator for you. You can just plug in your numbers and it will spit out these formula stuff for you. So you don't actually have to do the math. Yippee.
I know.
And so it's very exciting.
Yeah. So
you'll see that in the document.
So go grab that document, go get it. It's free. 4 pricing formulas for social media managers and consultants. And the, what else was I going to mention about it? It's great. I'm going to mention is it's awesome and it's free.
And we spend a lot of time on this, and so many people have been trained to use this because it really works. And especially if you're kind of one who just sort of like wings it a little bit. It might be a little bit more, on my side of the brain side over here instead of the engineer. Is that sometimes you think, oh yeah, well I'll just charge blah blah blah, and that's really not the way it works because you will be making $2 an hour that way.
Yep. So
we don't want you to do that.
We don't want that. We do not want that. So one other thing that I'm going to mention is this is all part of, and we go into this much deeper in our social media manager school. And just to give that a little plug really quickly is we are opening that up in a couple of weeks to new students. We only open it twice a year, and feel free to guys to ask questions as you are, as I'm,
can we unlock
social media manager school?
We're going to unlock a seat.
Unlock it as long as you've got clothing. We're going to unlock it. If you want to jump in, feel free.
Hats and wigs are optional. Clothing required.
Yes. So we are opening up Social Media Manager School on March 30th, and there's all kinds of information there on how pricing your services, getting clients, starting your business as a social media manager and consultant. I see so many of our students are here today. Awesome. Love you guys. And I'm so glad that people are downloading this resource. So that's great. And you will get notified about the opening of the school from getting on this list too. So you don't have to worry too much about missing it if you are interested in joining us. But join us now. Ask a question about pricing.
Run, go get a hat.
Get a hat. Get a wig.
Might be easier.
And if anyone has any other questions, or we can just talk about what else can we
All right,
talk
we got
about?
Mike. We bring a mic on, and we have an empty seat.
Hey,
Hi.
Hey, Mike. I thought you were heading out. That's why but I misread that.
No,
awesome.
I just got back from the Bahamas.
Oh,
so
nice.
That's there.
Yes. But I wanted to jump in real quick. I'm from Denver local here, as well as this young lady with the curly hair. And I wanted to say I was at a meetup recently for a Facebook 101 teaching. And I happened to meet a couple of ladies that have taken this class from you ladies and got their certifications. And they were great to work with. Their knowledge is really steadfast. It was on point. Their delivery was great. And we had a great time. And it wasn't until even afterwards that they confided in me. It was like, they've been through the educational course. So if anybody is on the fence and have not explored the options these ladies are offering you, I would highly encourage you to at least research it, because the ladies that I had the opportunity to work with and meet at this meetup on an educational track, they were great. So I just
you're awesome, Mike. You are so great.
So that's it. That's all I got.
Thanks for your.
That's great. Thank you so much.
There too. Great stuff. Comments on.
Yeah, and that's what, even with a big stuffy nose. Yeah, I just got off the boat with Mickey and Minnie and Goofy and all those guys down in the Bahamas. So that's where I was at for the last week. With our good friend Joel Com over the weekend, this week here in Denver.
Yeah, so. I know. I saw you there.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm out of here, you guys. If anybody has any questions, these ladies are just a wealth of information. I've followed Andrea for years, and she's a good local friend and just a great resource full of information and good people. So see you guys.
You're awesome, Mike. So great. We have a great question coming in from Garrett. And so I think you're talking about review marketing. So are you talking about like an audit type of thing, or like getting into like, checking out their reputation management, more so like watching for reviews,
or their
monitor and securing reviews for them? Okay.
Yes. So there are just because we're just going to back away from the question for just a second, because there are a few things here. A social media manager can offer as a consultation service a social media audit. And that can be configured in many different ways. They can use to gain new clients or to use for their advanced clients. Also, you can do a review of their marketing funnels if that's your thing, and that's something that's a lot of fun for you to do. You can go through and check how their marketing flows and give them suggestions along the way for social media. So there's a lot of cool things you can do that.
Yeah. And I think really just having like packaging your services like that, if you really enjoy like figuring out how to pop more reviews for clients, and you really like, figuring out how to bury those bad ones in Yelp and kind of go after some of that, there's a huge market for that. People are needing that type of service all the time. So that reputation management service. And if you can package that into a initial package or ongoing package, then that really helps your potential clients see, I can plug into that package, or I can plug into this, or, even just having a package that you offer initially helps them say, I kind of want a little bit of that and a little bit of that. So it helps them, really understand what you offer and how they can plug into your services. I get funny questions from clients sometimes. They're like, well, how can you help me? And I'm like, well, I guess I haven't done
there are many answers to that.
Of explaining what I do,
So there's another quick question here from Allie, and that is, do you all charge an extra onboarding fee when taking on a new client? Usually what happens for me when I have a new client is there are two kind of separate things that need to happen. There are social site creation or social site repair or social site, foundational kind of stuff. And then there's the actual marketing and the actual tasks that happen monthly. So a lot of times I'll separate those out and have two different fees for that. But I personally don't charge a fee to take on a new client. I do bill in a way that I'm paid upfront for my services. So a lot of times that's sort of like an onboarding, because you do have that money, that income right away.
Right. And I definitely do an onboarding with my Facebook ad clients. So I do a lot of ad management for clients. And that initial setup can be really, really challenging, because you got to get all the pixels in place. You have to make sure that they've got their funnel going on. You've got to do a lot of initial setup within their ads manager often, to make sure their billing is there. A lot of times they're starting sometimes from scratch with that. And so I charge a higher fee for my first set of ads that I do with the client. And then subsequently, usually it's like ongoing work where we say, okay, let's just add in a couple new ads every week. And then it's kind of custom quote there for that. So depending on how.
Now, Allie does say that she meant for researching their market and their competitors. So again, this is something that you can actually have as a separate service that you charge for. Or if you decide to not charge for it, I wouldn't spend a tremendous amount of time on it, because that's valuable time for you and it's valuable information for them. So you might, this is again, it's a kind of thing you have to decide how you're going to juggle this.
Right. And I also do an audit for clients, and then that researching and the market and the competitors and stuff like that are all built into the cost of that audit. So, I think that if you are just starting out, it is challenging because there is going to be more time front loaded than the ongoing, monthly maintenance beyond that. So that's a hard thing to juggle. So, and sometimes I know people require like an audit before they get started with a client. So they do essentially charge for that research time. They say, before we get started, there's an audit fee or something like that. That would allow you to do that work and kind of get paid for it without telling them it's really a research fee on your part. So it could be just a way of kind of saying that in a nicer way than kind of,
So there's some interesting things in the chat, and we are like at the end of our chat, but there's some good stuff here. I do want to say real quick here is that, yes, there are some social media managers who develop an onboarding sort of library, and they send new clients to the library and have them go through it so that they know what's going to happen. They know how it's going to work, and that's all done, and it's sort of self-serve that way. Yes, there are people that do that. There are also people, especially if they're working with local businesses, who can physically sit down with the owner and say, this is how it works, and can do all of that. If you're only working with virtual clients, again, the cool thing is you get to design your business the way you want to design it and what works for you. So that's the best part of it.
Yep, for sure. So I want to answer one question that came up earlier from, I forget who signed in as Hanahan Hilton. I know I saw your name earlier, and I know it's not Hanahan Hilton, but I'm going to answer that question. It was a respite social media management to cover vacations or time off for other social media managers. Mm-hmm. And that could definitely be something. I know that's a huge problem for a lot of social media managers. They're like, I can never take a vacation. So if you offered that service, I think that, and plugged into a real group of social media managers who, who kind of gave you referrals and connected with you, then I think that could develop into a full-time job, because there's a lot of solopreneurs doing this social media management who don't always have a great plan in place. Sometimes they do have other people in their team who kind of take over, or they, figure out that kind of thing, but that could be a service in itself for sure.
I would think that if you did that, I would require the social media manager to have scheduled the post in advance for the time that they're going to be gone, and that you in this service would be monitoring notifications and comments and replies. And then that would be probably a really good way to do it. So this has been lots of fun. Everybody got their documents. We should put the document link down in there again. And
for those of you who are just joining us, we have, if you missed this, we don't want you to miss out. We've got the, where did I put it? It was for pricing. Oh, I lost it. There it is. Okay. I'm getting the link. So it's the pricing formulas here. It's everything we kind of covered in this blab. We're also recording this blab so you can get more details. This was so much fun. And every Friday we have a lot of fun. Next Friday, we're going to be talking about how to organically grow your following. We're going to talk specifically on tips on each of the social sites to organically grow your following. So come next Friday.
See the hats and wigs.
Yes.
All right,
bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.